What's up, everybody? My name is Chris Enriquez. At Chris Enriquez Drums, you're watching Age of Quarantine. I'm your host tonight. I play in the band Spotlights at Spotlights Music, and I work at Revolver Magazine at Revolver Mag. Those are all the handles. I want to thank St. Vitus for allowing me to do my web series, Age of Quarantine, on here. I also want to let you know that all past episodes are either on my personal YouTube channel, if you look up Christopher Enriquez, or they are also on the Revolver Magazine YouTube channel. Now, I just want to start by saying that obviously this is a crazy week. As a minority, this is just a super weird one to deal with. A lot of stuff that's been going on, but we chose to continue the show because I think we all need we need some positive stuff throughout the day, as life has been so difficult and complicated and upsetting with all the crazy shit going on in the world. It's nice to talk to our favorite artists, spread some positivity, and tonight is no exception. Evan Patterson from Jaye Jayle and Young Widows. Very prolific guy, really talented, creative, unique, been in the music world for a long time. He's performed at St. Vitus several times. I'm about to bring him on the screen. In case you're wondering what you hear in the background, that is Jaye Jayle's No Trail Path 1 from No Trail and Other Unholy Paths. Let's get Evan Patterson on the screen. And thank you for spending a Thursday night with me. You guys rule. I hope you're all being safe out there and that you're healthy and well. Evan,
What's up, man?
how are you?
That's a confusing question, but
Right.
yeah,
Obviously, yeah, that's a very general question. I'm going to get more specific, obviously.
yeah.
But yes, it certainly is. And for that reason alone, I thank you for taking the time. Because I don't know if you just heard or watched the intro, but I was just kind of letting people know that while it is a weird time and we're all kind of confused about whether it's okay to do stuff like this, I think we continue to do it just because, we want to spread positivity. It was the whole point of the show. And we want to give people an opportunity to just unwind, even if it's just for an hour, and learn about their favorite artists, which is no exception right now. So I just want to thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. I know. I mean, I was debating on whether I wanted to do it as well. So.
Right. Yeah.
Well, but I communicate with so few people throughout the day as it is. It's exciting to actually talk to someone else besides just my wife and my brother on the phone or my dog. So,
hey man, that's three more than I have, and that was actually that's actually why I started doing this on my personal, because I was like, shit, I'm so social, I have no one to talk to. This is gonna suck. So I'm like, maybe I could talk to artists that I either know or like, and then have strangers watch and talk to them. What a crazy idea. And here
it's
we
perfect.
are. Yeah. Well, we canceled, we postponed Tuesday's episode because the whole music industry shut down, and we're back at it. But we have, like I was saying in the intro, obviously we have not forgotten by any stretch of the imagination what's going on, and obviously we can talk a little bit about that. But I do want to try to focus on some more positive things, as hard as that might be, and just talk about you and your music, because we know you from Breather Resist and Jaye Jayle and Young Widows, and St. Vitus is a place that has hosted shows that you've played before. So, we want to use the platform to dive in and get to know you a little better. And I see some people have started submitting questions, which is great. So if you have any questions, just use the question mark box. I'll try to get to them, and I'll try to read the comments. But, let's talk a little bit about the reality, though. Like, how have you been managing, first of all, with the pandemic challenges just to get through life?
It started off, I actually kind of was enjoying it starting off. I mean, last year I played 210 shows. And after that, and I was actually gone. I went to Italy and produced a band from Italy's record, this band Kent. And once I got done with the year, I was kind of planning on taking a break because I just didn't know how to stand still.
Right.
And so then once I came home, and then in January we got a dog. So, it's just there's certain things that I was really enjoying about the isolation that I'd already planned to have. But then all future plans of releasing the new record and any idea of, the restlessness is starting to kick in at this point.
It really is, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
yeah, and on in a month into the pandemic, my cousin overdosed on heroin laced with fentanyl.
Fuck.
So that was also a really rough time, and that was, as much as you can say it was unexpected, but it was also a thing that he'd struggled with for a decade, and going through a funeral and going through trying to do a family gathering and try to, it was a fucking mess. I mean, that's all I can say.
So
And
sorry to hear that. Yeah.
well, I appreciate that. And then since then, it's just kind of been a domino effect of things, and now where we are. I mean, I honestly think I've been a little scared to go out and protest because a mutual friend also died on Friday, which he thought he had COVID. So,
Fuck.
and he was young; he was in his early 40s, and
That's
I,
scary as fuck, man. I'm
it
gonna be
is,
40. Yeah.
yeah, it is, and it's one of those things of like someone so close that you're like, okay, the guys, like Corey, who's in Jaye Jayle, was working with them during the pandemic, doing construction. All these people are close to him, and then that happens, and the protesting's happening, and I'm like, I was just around these people. The last thing I want to do is be irresponsible, and
No, dude, I'm with you.
it's
I really am.
it's tough. So I feel today I got the news that he didn't have COVID, so I kind of feel like I can go out tomorrow and stand with everyone. So that's exciting.
Stay safe out there. Look, I'm with you. I've been taking a lot of advantage of social media lately because I'm not going to go off on too much of a rant because I want to focus on other things. But as a minority that has dealt with police brutality and racism and harassment, it's very dear to me. And I shared some stories online that luckily resonated and were reposted by other people. And I had people tell me they were reading some of my essays. But that was my way of doing it because I'm a germaphobe to begin
Yeah,
with. Before the pandemic, I just get weird about touching like basic stuff.
people.
Doors, people I don't know, shaking their
Yeah,
hand, doors.
yeah,
So I want to protest, but I just the timing of people and sickness, it's just a little scary. But
it
we're on the
is.
same page.
Yeah.
And what's everything like around you in general? Like when you do go outside, or not much you've been out there. Like, has it been a little crazy? Out in the
I mean,
streets over there.
I honestly have gone. I haven't really gone out much at all. I mean, maybe I only maybe once or twice in the past 6 days.
Wow. Okay.
And but just sitting, smoking cigarettes, and drinking in my backyard, which is what I do. Kind of, that's my thing. Like I'll do that longer than I should and earlier than I should. But I mean, all day since Friday, it's just helicopters and gunshots all around me, and I'm I'm fairly like close. I mean, I would say where we live is on the cusp of the inner city
Okay.
for Louisville, which like Louisville is in a massive downtown area. It's
I actually love it there. It's
yeah. Well,
one of my favorite
I
areas.
I love it as well. It's but it's just one of those things. You're sitting outside and it's like there are gunshots 2 blocks away and there's helicopters and it's kind of it's unsettling. Even last night at 12:30 at night, I'm smoking my last cigarette for the night, sitting on my front porch, which is different than I normally do, and it's just like gunshots over and over again,
Right,
you
right.
know, and then fireworks, and then it's like
I heard
I
fireworks last night, and I thought it was gunshots because I've heard gunshots, and I freaked out because it was like, pop, 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 pop. I was like, holy shit, yeah.
yeah. I mean, this is like, if it's under 3 or 4, I'm pretty sure it's gunshots.
Right. That I actually that I've heard during the pandemic outside the window. But yeah, exactly what you just said. Because like I was like, there's no way. That's like the fireworks were like exploding everywhere, and I'm
Yeah.
like, that there's no way. That have to be a fucking machine gun. But yeah,
And there was another murder in town during the protest in Louisville, which I'm sure everyone knows about at this point.
right.
And so I mean, I believe we're the only city that has had, of the three, that has had another, a cop brutality murder. I mean,
Yep.
and it's kind of insane how small the city is and how it can't be controlled and regulated and or monitored in a way that is more peaceful.
Hmm.
But that's something that I kind of, I didn't want to talk about. I do kind of want to talk about this more than I don't want to. But it's just Kentucky's like it's such a backward state, and
Yeah.
outside of Louisville is incredibly racist, and I've lived through that and seen that and escaped it through music and art, and
That's yeah.
you
That's how
know
you
and,
do it. Yeah.
yeah, that's how we all have done it.
Yep.
Clearly, it's like we'd all be like working some job, doing something that has nothing to do with progression and change and like making a revolution. Like
Yeah.
we're all trying to do similar things, but it's I think it's hard for people to escape that in small communities, like rural communities,
Right.
because the options of where do you go to be around more progressive people, and in Kentucky it's almost like there's only Louisville,
Right. Louisville is interesting,
Yeah.
and the last time I even spent quality time there is almost 20 years ago. So, and it was already, I hate, I don't know if the word gentrified is appropriate, but it was already, it was kind of, it reminded me of Brooklyn
Yeah.
when I was there in 2006.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to pivot a little bit because you gave me an easy way to do it by mentioning Louisville, being a musician, and using art in a way to kind of escape some of the hardships and which is or so many things, racism, just oppression. Period. It could be like the music you were into, or what you dressed like, or what the color of your hair was, and for people like us, it's fair to assume you get into hardcore punk rock and then evolve, but it kind of starts with feeling like an outcast or an outsider. And Louisville, this is my pivot. Louisville, I've been familiar with the music scene there since the mid to late '90s. So I want to talk about that because that's where you're from. I'm thinking about bands like By the Grace of God and Kindle and
Yeah.
Falling
Absolutely.
Forward
Yeah.
and even Elliott. Um, let's take a let's take a trip back because there is a relation to that. So you're growing up there. You kind of I'm guessing you could tell me yourself, but you find underground music and aggressive music. Let's talk about what that did for you, what drew you to it, and how it came into your life.
I mean, it was my first music phase was like gangster rap. Like when I was a kid, that was like what I latched onto, and I was like listening to BDP and like Public Enemy and all of that was kind of because I was only 30 minutes south of Louisville, so we had Ear Ecstasy, which was like the big record store in Louisville,
That
which
place is sick.
yeah, and I mean everyone like nationally it was like known as probably one of the top 10 indie stores in the country, and everyone in every band worked there or was there. It was the place you went, and they carried everything from, I mean, I believe like this was even before, this was after it already gotten into like punk music and skateboarding and, all of those things, but just going there and, I believe like I bought an Operation Ivy cassette tape and
at Ear Ecstasy.
at Ear Ecstasy and a Dinosaur Jr. cassette tape. And at this point I'd even been going to a couple shows and, it's, my first show in Louisville, my brother, luckily, like I had an older brother, Ryan, and he took me to see Avail and Guilt.
Dude,
And
that was
yeah,
my first show too.
was it?
Avail.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember Guilt, by the way. They were great.
Yeah,
They were
Guilt went on to be on Victory Records, and
yeah.
Avail was a. I mean, honestly, Avail was like such a positive, like uplifting band, and as a young, I wasn't even a teenager. I was 11, and it was just like,
Jesus, really? Wow.
yeah, and you're just like feel this, you know, this community of people and this culture that doesn't compare to anything. And all I knew before that was like skateboarding the streets with, with like a group of 10 people maybe, or playing sports, which I could never identify with sports culture. And
Me
then
neither. It was like it was
yeah,
punk rock or jocks. Yeah.
yeah. And then you get to a punk show, and all of a sudden you're just like, oh wait, this is actually a positive influence that, it's clearly not oppressive, and it's creative and about exploring and experimenting and, enjoying life, like rather than pushing people down and telling them they should be doing something else. It's like,
Absolutely. At its core, right? Just like hip hop.
exactly. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's supposed to be street music, counterculture, etc. You're gonna have your weird ones that come out where it's just like, oh, there's a Christian, whatever. I don't want to talk to you about. I
Yeah,
shouldn't go there, but you know what I mean. There's like
yeah,
certain bands in punk rock where you're just like, oh, that's weird. Like that's not supposed to be what this is about. But I know what you mean. It's great.
of course. Yeah, yeah.
You
So, I
started
mean, it was
early.
very early. Yeah. I mean, that was like, I looked, I'm 6'4", so even when I was 11, I think I was already near 6 feet tall. So I looked probably older than everyone else did, even when I
And
was
can I
11.
ask you,
But
like, I know a lot of the bands in Louisville, like the ones I mentioned, but like, who for you guys, we all have different scenes. Like, who for you guys would be kind of hailed as like the first, one or like the pioneering punk or hardcore band in Louisville for your scene?
I mean, there's Squirrel Bait was a band that was pre-Slint, and they were pretty early on. I mean, at this point, I know kind of more about the early punk history of Louisville, but I mean, a lot of the pioneers, what brought me and my brother into it was Guilt and Endpoint
Oh,
and those,
Endpoint, that was another one.
yeah, and those bands, because I mean they were putting on shows, and there would be, there'd be like a couple thousand people coming out to see bands play in Louisville, and we were all young and kids, but it was just such an exciting thing.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I mean, and that was around the time when like Slint was a band and only played, a dozen shows. And I saw Hoover play, which is one of my biggest
Hoover was
influences
sick.
through,
Yeah.
through Jason Noble, who did Rodan.
Right.
And like Rodan was kind of a pioneer for that world of indie rock and, punk music. And, there were so many bands at that point in time that worked their fucking ass off. Like that was
I
the
don't think
thing.
I
Like,
realized that they were from Louisville. I know all those bands. I didn't realize they were from there. Um,
yeah,
that's awesome. I mean, we could talk about that forever. I love the history of stuff.
Hmm.
Just going back into like why Louisville, why is that the place that like ended up more progressive or more sort of whatever compared to the rest. It's fascinating, but
Because there's nothing else to do.
right. I guess many of us at St. Vitus are from Long Island, and
Yeah,
so that's not far from the city, but there's way less to do, and you have to drive everywhere. It's suburban, so it's
exactly.
same shit.
Yeah.
When did you decide that you wanted to participate and have your voice, and how did you come to find all of that, your instrument and your voice and all that stuff?
It's funny. I mean, I remember that Hoover show was very important to me because, Hoover was kind of almost like a kraut rock, indie rock band or something. They were just super repetitive and had this like, they had all kinds of elements like dub elements that were incorporated in it. And that was the thing that I didn't even know what dub was at that point in time, but listening to that music and then listening to Fugazi and getting into Gang of Four and a lot of post-punk music that I would not have ever heard unless it was for the DC music scene and the
Oh,
Louisville music scene being
yeah,
connected.
we
And
had Jay Robbins on last night. Speaking of that, and
yeah, yeah,
all that shit, man. Discord Records, man. Fuck.
absolutely. I mean, like that, DC and Louisville and Chicago kind of have this, like triangle of, communication and functioning within influences. But I mean, I guess Hoover was around the time I was started thinking about playing music, and I really was influenced by a lot of like of the noise rock music, like Amphetamine Reptile.
Oh yeah.
And when I heard like the first Today Is the Day record, and I heard, when I heard Dead Guy, I'm supposed to be a part of this Dead Guy documentary that's coming out.
Dude, Dead
They're
Guy
interv-
is fucking ridiculous. I mean,
and Dead
if you're
Guy
having a
and
bad day,
Rorschach.
that is the shit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there was this compilation. It was called. Uh, it was an Old Glory compilation. It was called God's Chosen People, I believe, and that was this compilation of like every song was a different artist back when they used to do that
Right, the
on
comp thing.
vinyl.
Yeah.
Yeah, and every single band was just like it was just education to me. I was just listening to like these people that could barely play music, but what they were doing was incredibly inventive. You
Yeah,
know?
I think we probably grew up around the same time. I don't want to ask your age if that's not something you're comfortable sharing, but
No, no, yeah, I'm 38, so
oh,
yeah,
okay, so it makes sense. I'm 39.
yeah.
I actually, by the way, and we'll get into this later. I think I played shows with Breathe or Resist back in the day in
Oh,
Long Island bands. I'm pretty sure I did, and I
you
think you
probably.
played with Long Island bands also.
I feel like
Uh,
I played Long Island like 8 times
yeah,
back.
I've
Yeah,
seen you guys, and there was a relationship between the Long Island hardcore scene and the initial records.
yeah. Silent
Louisville scene.
Majority.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and then everybody would go to Crazy Fest. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, like those comps that you're talking about. I guess today it's playlists.
It
Somebody
is. Yeah.
asking, yeah. So to the person that was just asking for Evan's playlist of early influences, yeah. Like I mean, I almost could sum it up for you what he just said, but yeah, Guilt and Candles, Falling Forward, and Rodan and Hoover. Check all that shit out on Spotify. But those were cool because they were bands that didn't have the same genre. It'd be like an indie rock band, a noise band. Those
Absolutely.
were
Yeah. Yeah.
really,
It was like being introduced to Rorschach, which my father listened to classic rock and like Hendrix and the Beatles, and so it's like I feel like some things he didn't really ever get far out there, and he kind of despised anything that was like religious in any element. It's like so he didn't like anything that was metal, but
right.
it's like in it Rorschach. This is the first time I heard 21st Century Schizoid Man,
Oh
and
my God, that's right. Yeah,
yeah,
I
and I
did
was just
that.
like I was like this is a cover song, and that I'm introduced to King Crimson, and you know, like years later, I'm like, it's, you know, it's wild that you don't hear such important music in your young life, and then you're hearing like, well, you know, like Rorschach wouldn't exist if it wasn't for King Crimson, and you know, Voivod wouldn't
Yeah.
exist if it wasn't for this. You know, there's so
Right.
much
Right.
there's so much influence in like older music that's, you know, I almost feel like someone should make a book of like, if you like modern heavy music, listen
Right.
to all these bands. You know, it's there
Hey,
needs to be an instruction book.
next time you come to St. Vitus, you got to hang out with the main owner, Artie Shepherd, because you just talked about some of
Uh,
his favorite bands. I'm sure you
I
have.
played I played a show with Artie before,
Oh,
so
there you go. Yeah, if you get him going, he'll talk
with
about
his
Rorschach and King
oh yeah
Crimson and Yes, and but like it's either the noise bands or the prog bands. But
yeah.
so how when did you pick up your instrument and start using your voice and all that? Like how did that kind of start and when?
I started playing guitar when I was 13. I think I had my first guitar then, and you know, then the first band I was doing, you know, there were, you know, I would say the first real band that I actually like went out and played shows with, I was not much older, 14 or 15, playing around like Cincinnati, Ohio, and around Kentucky,
What was
and
that band that you were doing first? Was it Breathe or Resist?
no, I mean that was a band called, you know, Whole Angels Academy, and I was like a super young kid, and everyone was older than me, like out of outside there, everyone was like older in like college years, and uh and then I was doing the band The National Acrobat, which was like the first band that I really started. You know, I went on a tour when I was 17 during a school break, and then went. We did some tours that were with ISIS and Dillinger Escape Plan and Candiria,
I remember
and
that band. I
yeah,
might have seen it.
yeah, and you know, we played Hellfest and
Yeah.
did a weekend with Converge and Cave In, like pre Jupiter Cave In, and
Right, back
you
in the
know,
Beyond Hypothermia
yeah.
days, yeah.
So you know, gained to like, I had all these relationships with all of those people, and the Hydra Head records scene was like super influential on me, as well as like, you know, Dead Guy and like AmRep, and then all of a sudden it was, you know, probably it was probably 2002 when Breathe or Resist was going.
Right. Well, we got let me take some questions from people, and we it's too bad we didn't get in. I know we're about to get into Breathe or Resist, and we have so much more to cover. I hate how the time flies by so fast, but I
Oh, it's fine, yeah.
feel bad ignoring people. Andrew from the Dillinger compound wants to know if it's possible, will you ever do a reunion with Breathe or Resist?
Um, it's pretty doubtful. Yeah,
Okay.
it was a long time ago, but I mean, maybe you never know.
All right. Jack Zima wants to know, are you willing to sell prints eventually of your artwork?
Uh, I I do want to sell prints. I'm trying to figure that out now because I'm currently just running out of money because I don't have any work. But I'd like to take this drawing. I've been drawing a lot since the pandemic. That's kind of been my thing. I actually haven't been making much new music at all, and just focusing on releasing the new record. And drawing has kind of fulfilled that creative void. And I would like to make prints eventually. You will know when I do.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, your artwork is very distinct and unique and very cool. And I wanted to get into that in a second. But you were saying you were getting into Breathe or Resist. How did that band start? Um, and you guys put out a bunch of stuff on Jade Tree and Death Wish. Take us through that history a little bit of how it started and why it eventually came to an end.
Well, Breathe or Resist was I was kind of I was actually doing a band Black Cross with my brother that put out a full length on Equal Vision, and
I remember that band.
I was playing bass in that band, and we were doing that project, but I wanted to make more aggressive music and more I mean, I was like a counter. I would like just count guitar riffs, and nothing made any sense. It was just all numbers, and it was so I was kind of like scouting to find bandmates, and I found all of the guys that were in Breathe Resist were in another local band, and asked them if they wanted to do this new band, and we started doing that and recorded the demo pretty quickly. And Death Wish ended up releasing a EP of that, and then within like about a year or so, we did like some tours with Converge, and about a year or so later, we signed to Jade Tree and released a full length on Jade Tree, and toured Europe and the U.S. nonstop. Just, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, at that point in time, it was. I remember year 3 or 4, we said to each other, "We have only played 170 shows this year. That's great." Is we were just getting in the van and driving and playing everywhere and anywhere, and met so many incredible people that I still, most of the people I still see and know when I go on tour that I, might like step out and like hang out with are people that I've met a lot from those tours.
Right, right, right.
So then, Breathe Resist, we kind of just fell into, I wouldn't say artistic differences, but just struggling as a family, because that's what every band is, and just decided that we wanted to try to do it without a singer. So that's when Young Widows started.
Right, and that makes sense. Because you came and stepped it up, and became a front man. Was that a weird transition for you, or had you, or
It
was
was awful.
yeah, yeah?
It was awful, yeah.
Did you?
I,
How did that even happen? Did you step up, or were they like, dude, can you just do this?
well, we were talking about singing, both of us, Nick and I, and then, it's being the main like songwriter, and it was one of those things, sitting around playing guitar and coming up with words to go with it. And, I mean, I
Very
used to,
different. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I used to sit down and with Steve, who sang in Breathe Resist, and we'd kind of go over phrasing, because it was something you'd be like, I don't know how to sing over this music. It doesn't make any sense to me. And we'd sit together and work on phrasing and that kind of thing. And so it was natural, but I honestly kind of hate it. I'm not really a big talker to people outside of my really tight friends. You
It's
know,
so strange to think about,
it,
like certain singers. Um, there's many that fit that sort of bill where it's like not very social in person, don't like a lot of attention. Not saying that's you, maybe it is, but then in order to perform and sing, and that's your passion, you kind of like are forced into this like, oh, I'm not playing now, so I have to tell a story.
exactly.
And it's not coming naturally. So, and some people have different approaches where, who knows?
Yeah.
It's anyone's game at that point.
Yeah. I mean, singing definitely, I mean, I would say I had no idea what I was doing with my voice. I was just opening my mouth up and projecting words and hoping I was trying to achieve something that I don't think I really grabbed a hold of until doing the Young Widows record, In and Out of Youth and Lightness. I don't think I really knew exactly what I was doing until that album, and it was all just like, okay, I'm a singer in a punk band, and I'm just going to open my mouth and put it out there, and
Yeah.
whatever emotion brings whatever note, that's the note that I'm singing.
Right. Yeah.
And
Well, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
but it all, I mean, also in general, it made me a much better guitar player. It made me like think about guitar less, but be able to play guitar. It was something that I think I needed as, in that part of my musical life, I needed to think about the guitar less in a way.
It's weird. Well, I guess it's all about the art and what you're, and each song is different. So the approach, is always sort of going to vary. But overall, I'm kind of wondering, like, you mentioned AMREP and you mentioned a bunch of other influences. I mean, you've evolved significantly as a musician, as an artist, from your early days of playing more aggressive music. And Young Widows is still an aggressive punk band in its own right, but I hear some Jesus Lizard. I know people throw that out a lot. I know
Oh,
you get the
absolutely, yeah.
Swans thing a lot with different projects, but what are you, what were your influences guitar wise and as a singer specifically? I guess I was going to ask that earlier, but this is an interesting time to bring it up in context.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, Jesus Lizard and Birthday Party, and you know, Early Today's the Day still, and you know, Unsane, and you know, a lot of music. You know, listening to Swans. I think when I first started doing Young Widows was something that I was still processing as a
Yeah,
as a artist or musician. Like I didn't, you know, it was like, okay, this is kind of what Neurosis wants to be like. You know, it was like,
yeah,
you know, that's like when I first heard it, I was like, this is like Neurosis doesn't want to make screamy, heavy music anymore, and they're trying to make music more like these Swans records now. That's what my thought was.
yeah,
So it was going through and digesting so much music, and also at the same time, you know, it was, you know, Jesus Lizard was a heavy influence, and that was something that, I mean, I think we listened to Goat yesterday, you know,
holy
and that
shit, what a
and
fucking
it's
monster. Yeah,
yeah, and it's just one of those, it's like a classic rock album to me. I'm like, this will go in like, you know, the 50 best rock albums to me ever.
yeah,
And you know, and then as it went on, I think there were things that just making music that was more, you know, I mean, I guess I would say I also started doing a little more drugs somewhere in the middle of that process. So,
right,
so it became a thing of doing more of a thing that became more of a spiritual connection to the music, and about not as much about being aggressive.
hmm hmm
And with that, it was, you know, discovering a way to make it feel like time, you're traveling in time. That was like an idea I had through music and repetition and being introduced to krautrock, and yeah,
right.
listen to a lot of Swans, listen to a lot of, you know, I mean, you know, Kraftwerk and things like that. That,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, at the time, I don't think I'd even ever really played a synthesizer. I was just like, I don't know how anyone makes this music, or you know, and then also like kind of gaining the perspective to understand music like Velvet Underground, and understand music that's like, as a math rock, you know, punk kid that
yeah,
just wanted to play as many notes as in many strange times as possible. I couldn't really digest the idea, or come to the idea that this was actually just making things way less more. They wasn't making things as enjoyable. It was stressful. It became stressful. The
right,
idea of
right,
it, you know,
right.
and it just like caps off. You're like, okay, I think I made the heaviest record I could possibly make.
Yeah,
Like,
no, totally, and it's also and like some artists are fine not evolving or progressing. It's like that ACDC kind of idea,
yeah, yeah,
like just leave it alone. But there's also something really cool about being in a position of you're talking about something that I hope a lot of younger people still do, which is especially with the information out there, which is going back and understanding music that came before you that sort of shaped all of the stuff around it. It's like Velvet Underground you mentioned, and obviously Swans, and they're a great reference because when they first started, they sounded very different from what they sound like now.
absolutely.
Yeah, and as you've been doing this since you went to your first show at 11, it's kind of cool to evolve for the reason that like if you want to still do this when you're 50 or 60, you kind of have a different way to stay aggressive or dark, whatever it is. And like Swans, I know we're using them as a reference a lot. I'm sure it gets old, but they're obviously a fan as well, where it's not awkward. You
Yeah.
can still do it and still play it. I hear that with your music,
Hmm.
especially with Jaye Jayle, which I want to get into. But I just want to say, Old Wounds was the album that got me into what you were doing. That really like got on my radar, and
Hmm.
I heard Jesus Lizard, but it was all really original. I think the bass playing was like really stood out to me, and a lot of friends of mine the same. Just like, dude,
Yeah.
you got to hear this. This is sick. And I'm gonna totally kiss your ass right now and mention that we've had a couple primitive weapons practices where we were like, no, it's got to be more like this. It's got to be more like that old wound stuff. We totally stole some of your shit, but um, yeah, I love it. Easy Pain is amazing too, man. You've done some really cool shit. What's a typical songwriting creative process like for Young Widows?
um, it's kind of strange. It went from being somewhat more. It changes with every record. Like every single record has a different concept for writing. So it would be like, this is how the bass line goes. This is how the guitar part is. And then, with Old Wounds, it was odd because we changed drummers in the middle of that writing session. So we went from working on these songs with another drummer and then getting Jeremy, who's still in the band, to join the band and kind of teaching him those songs. So somewhere in there, I'm like, I don't know how we wrote those songs. It was kind of a thing of like, we're supposed to record in 6 weeks and we have 6 songs written and we need to write 6 more. And we just really just powered through on that record. And then
It's great. It's great
with,
stuff.
and I feel like that record just kind of had more of that, like Wipers. I mean, it's a punk record. It's like, to me still, it's a driving punk record. And,
Hmm.
I mean, I would say a lot of those songs that I do remember sitting around just playing an SG that I have not plugged in, just playing it, electric,
Sitting
not
on
an
your
acoustic
couch.
guitar,
Yeah.
just playing that and writing that record on that SG and coming up with the concept. I think I just started smoking pot a little bit at that time too, which I can't do anymore. But I was just deciding what notes sound the best, what have the best resonance on this specific guitar. And that was how a lot of that record was written, because I was trying to find out what notes sound the best
We
on
got a
that
couple. Yeah,
specific guitar. So,
we got a couple questions from people. I don't know how to pronounce this person's screen name, but it's underscore MTHVSN underscore. Are you a self-taught guitarist?
I am, yes,
Okay.
absolutely, 100%.
Some nice comments from people. Old Wounds is the greatest of all time noise rock record. Um,
Thank you.
coming from Mick Food Service 11. Um, how is Bevy STB wants to know how is writing with Ben?
Writing with Ben for the new Jaye Jayle record. Uh,
We're going to transition to that so we could go into it.
yeah, Prison, making that record was unlike anything I've ever done in my entire life, just mostly because I composed it on my phone. But then sending him the music, he didn't really change much of what was going on as far as the composition. He mostly added instruments and would add dynamics and filters, and I mean, he's fucking brilliant. I mean, he's absolutely brilliant. And I mean, people should investigate more of his music that he produces and makes beyond like Chelsea Wolfe and this record. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's pretty brilliant what he's capable of doing, and what his ideas are genius.
I'm sure he's done a lot more records than I realized that I probably listened to, actually, given the nature that he's worked with you and Chelsea. Well, we jumped in a little bit, but when did Jaye Jayle start and how? Because you're still doing Young Widows, right?
We are, but we haven't done anything since our European tour last year. So
Okay.
it's tough to do because
So
our drummer has 3 children, so
Got it.
keeps him very busy.
Right, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was wondering, like, at what point, you decided to step out and do Jaye Jayle. Maybe you could give us that story.
It was around the time we finished a tour cycle for In and Out of Youth and Lightness, and I had a partner that was living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I was traveling out there, and I was a lot, and spent about 8 months out there within a year and a half, 2 years, and I was listening to a lot of blues music and obscure country music, and just kind of being restless and not having a vehicle while she was going to classes. She was going to college there, and I decided to just start writing these kind of simple songs, like folky kind of songs, not like something I've ever done before.
Big
And
transition, yeah.
yeah, it was a big transition. And when I started doing that, it just slowly turned into a thing that some of my friends that I was playing music with just said, you should just make a record of this. And, I think I was trying to come up with a name that meant a bluebird cage and also sounded like an old country or blues artist.
Right, right, right.
And I was like, I'm just gonna make up some words that don't make any sense at all and put them together, and it's just kind of stuck. It was one of those things of the meaning. It's meaningful and meaningless and confusing, and I mean I love it. It's like such a beautiful, exciting name because no one knows how to say it or read it or take it or
I think I figured it out because I discovered you from playing with you. So it was like the first time I heard you guys was when we played together in Brooklyn with Pelican. Yeah, man, like well, how many funny question too, because like I didn't even think about that. It's a person's name. Do you get people that think that's your name often?
Absolutely, and I find it charming. It's charming. I mean, it's almost like if someone, I bet somebody who doesn't know your name who works the venue is probably like, "Hey, Spotlights."
Right.
It's like they don't know how to
I've
talk
had
to
people
you.
call me like I've had drunk people be like, "Oh, hey, what's up, Revolver Guy?" Because of my day job, and I'm like, "My name's Chris. First of all, nice to meet you." That's a little
Exactly.
different, but
I mean, there's a charm to the confusion of it, which
I really love. I was in the beginning of this episode before you joined me. I was playing No Trail Path One. I love that piano line. What is a creative process like for you in general with Jaye Jayle? Is it different for everything, or is there kind of a standard?
I mean, it's clearly. I mean, clearly, this new record is completely different because I made it completely on my own, and I didn't have to work with showing the compositions to anyone else and showing the ideas and and experimenting as a group. I mean, I would say. I mean, House Cricks, the first Jaye Jayle collection full length. I mean, that was kind of older songs mixed with new songs that we kind of would just jam the songs and just say, yeah, just keep going, just like keep it driving, keep it simple, get to the end, and just let the story be the basis of the song rather than the music taking over. That was the idea for that record.
It's beautiful, man. That record is fucking gorgeous. I have a
But
lot of friends that listen to. Some people I know that only listen to that record that are just like, I only listened to this record this year, like over and over again. I mean, it's
incredible.
I know you get recognition for different things, but I think you're really prolific, and it's and you've been doing it for so long, and this stuff I feel like should really cement you somewhere for being recognized for what you've done musically, man. It's really amazing.
Well, thank you.
Stuff. Yeah. I want to acknowledge a couple more people that are leaving some nice comments. Ben Finley, Young Widows is easily one of my favorite bands of all time.
Thank you,
so
Ben.
much for the music you've created. And We're at our 10-minute mark, and we get kicked off. So a few more questions. Um, you have a new single, Gun Time.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the new single, and everyone could stream that on Spotify, and I'm sure they could buy it from you on Bandcamp as well. Let's just give some info there on the new single.
Yeah, the new single is, I think it's the sixth song off the full length, and it was a song that is about Young Widows was on tour, and we had a guy next to us. I'm talking to our driver, and I'm looking out the window talking to him, and I see a guy leaning out his window, getting out his window with an Uzi pointed at us, and then he
Jesus.
slows down in front of us and keeps holding the Uzi at us, and it was a very odd situation, I guess, once in a lifetime, I hope, situation.
Right.
So we pulled off, and our driver called the French police, and he said, "Oh, there's just kids having a fun time. Don't worry about it." And this is what the song is about. And every song almost every song on the record is about a real life story. Or I composed all of the music while on tour, and I made the music to Gun Time while I was driving through New Mexico on the Emma Ruth Rundle Mono Tour last year, because I play guitar with Emma in her
Yep. Yep.
band.
And she plays with you in Jaye Jayle sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. We try to always, have each other play on our records, and
I love that. Yeah. Shout out to Emma. I think she commented earlier. Yeah.
so so that song's out, and tomorrow's that Bandcamp day, and everyone should support, everyone who's donating as much music as possible that they can to all the beautiful things going on in the world that need help,
Absolutely.
because things have to change.
Yeah, man. It's great that people are really trying to use their art in ways right now to raise awareness and donate to great charities, and just use it as a vehicle to let their voices be heard, and we need that more than ever. We got one more question. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, all these, there needs to be a change. All these new leaders need money and need funding, and all the way things are in America have to change, and everyone here knows this. So I'm sure I'm just, I'm not preaching to anything new to anyone. It's just been long overdue.
Absolutely.
So give money to people that really need it to change what's going on in their community.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to take one more question from one member of the audience, and then I'm going to kind of go into kind of our home stretch here in the last 7 minutes. Okay. So, an alcohol. This is from JP Nunez M. An alcoholic bluebird. I want to know how I can find this.
That was an exclusive acoustic collection of songs I made, demo songs that I was making on my phone to present to the band to turn into future full band Jaye Jayle songs, and it is not available anymore. But some of those songs will be not on the new Jaye Jayle record, but the next one, whenever the fuck that happens, like probably a year or two from now.
Awesome. Well, there you go, man. Okay. The one of the final questions I always ask everybody is more like the desert island thing, right? Mm-hmm. So we're stuck in the quarantine. I hope we get out of this and go back to normal life soon. But if you can only keep 5 records and you're stuck at home, which maybe you already know the answers because you've probably been listening to a lot of music at home, what are they and why?
I would say, the Silver Apple self-titled record, Iggy Pop the Idiot. We just bought. I'm getting heavily into Moses Sumney, his new record, and that's 3, right?
That's 3.
Marco Polo, the score by Ennio Morricone.
Oh, hell yeah!
And I would say Piano Nights by Born and The Club of Death. The Club of
Awesome.
Galore. That's what it is. Those would be.
I knew most of that. I have to check out the other ones. And whoever was asking about music that you were into, you definitely shared a lot. So I mentioned this earlier. If you just tuned in, when this is over, it should be up from start to finish on the St. Vitus IGTV, but it will be on my personal YouTube channel within the next 24 to 48 hours if you missed the beginning. But this has been awesome, man. We do have a few more minutes, and I want to give you an opportunity to do some final words and shout-outs. But while we do have some extra time, I wanted to talk about Louisville a little bit more.
Yeah.
Did you ever hang out at a place called Cahoots or record at the funeral home with Kevin Ratterman? Because I made a record there, and I hung out at Cahoots every night and went to.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. What band did you make the record with Kevin?
Very small band that didn't really go anywhere, but we were called Gracer. And the reason I brought it up is because I didn't realize that was a funeral home.
I think I met you. I think I met you in La Bamba, Burritos as Big as Your Head.
Oh, that makes sense. I went there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Kevin while you're recording.
Yeah. Dude, who was... And there's a guy from like VHS or Beta.
Yeah.
That was from there, and I just hung out with a lot of people at Cahoots, and I would run into people. Who's that guy that played? Sorry, I know that we're doing this in public right now, but it was the guy that played bass in Elliott towards the end. That was in like every band. He was always at Cahoots.
Oh, the guy that played bass. Oh, Billy Bissig, Bill Bissig. Yeah.
It's a really fun scene.
I've definitely spent many nights at Cahoots and don't remember most of them, and that was a staple. That was actually that bar used to be called Tooligans, and that's where I went to my first show when I was 11.
Wow.
That was where Veil and Guilt played when I was 11. So
yeah.
But
you have recorded at the funeral home.
That's where In and Out of Youth and Lightness was recorded.
I didn't know.
Like yeah. We spent I think 3 weeks recording there, and it was it was strange because you'd walk up, and there'd be people outside smoking cigarettes while they're going to a funeral procession, and you're just kind of visitation, and it's always strange to think about.
Oh my God, it's so weird.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna go upstairs and make a rock album while you are down here grieving. It definitely sets the mood.
This is interesting if you're watching, if you like that record, which many of you mentioned. There's a studio in Louisville called the Funeral Home, and it's an actual funeral home where there are funerals during the daytime and bands recording at night, and you could sleep there. It's fucking weird, but
it's shut down now. It's non-existent now. So he built a huge Mecca studio, and now he doesn't even live in Louisville. But that's where Emma recorded On Dark Horses, and
really? Shit.
And also that's where Young Widows recorded Easy Pain. So
that's good to know. Very cool. All right, so I have a timer that you can't see that's going down from 1 minute and 20 seconds to the end. Do you want to say any final words or shout outs before we get kicked off here?
Thank you. Thanks, St. Vitus, for always giving me a show, no matter if I've been doing a band for a month. I feel like I can call St. Vitus and they'll give me a show, and that's kind of been I've been very thankful to have that. And to my wife Emma and my dog Sandy, and everyone, please stay safe and be smart, fight smart, wash your hands, wear a mask, and keep changing the world.
Yes, absolutely. Well said. Evan, let's talk offline sometime soon. I had a lot of fun, and feel like we have a lot of stuff that we could
absolutely
probably elaborate on. That'll be fun to chat about, and send my best to Emma, and hopefully we can hang out in real life soon.
Yes, it's good to get to know you.
You too, man. You too. Take care, and thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, bye. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to Evan. tomorrow, King Dude is going to be on the show, and next week I'll give you some information so that you can put this in your calendars. But Higher Power on Monday, Kill Switch Engage